Evening all, welcome to another kingscrusher radio show. So this is on the Play Chess server and also streaming to YouTube. So hope some of you are here, because I forgot to schedule this in advance. Oh well. It's been a busy week with the Norway Super Tournament on, and but anyway, let's have a look at some amazing historical games. Two amazing historical games for you today, carrying on the best of the best from the period 1920 to 1930. So these were voted as the best of the best from ChessGames.com members, put into game collections, commented on, etc. Some big formula, and so this is some really great games to look at. Now this game is Glucksberg against Miguel Najdorf. Yes, this is the same Najdorf for the Najdorf Sicilian, which I hope everyone knows about, but just in case you don't, the Najdorf Sicilian is kind of, for me, the Rolls Royce of all Sicilians, where this is not the game. The Najdorf, introduced by Miguel Najdorf, is this system, and it stood the test of time as one of the best Sicilian defences going. In fact, one year, not just too long ago, Boris Gelfand was beating up a lot of the 2700s with his Sicilian Najdorf. Anyway, in this game we see d4, so no chance to play the Sicilian. His opponent is Glucksberg. So who is Glucksberg? Actually, there's only one game in the database by Glucksberg, and it's this game. So there's nothing much to tell about Glucksberg. Najdorf later famously lost, I think, against Fischer on the run-up to the 1972 match. And actually also there's a bit of trivia here. In 1950, that's 21 years after this game, Najdorf was one of the original group of 27 players to whom FIDE first awarded the official Grandmaster title. So that's interesting as well. So he was one of the first Grandmasters, the first of the 27 chess Grandmasters. So 1950. The FIDE rating system came in the 1970s later, but FIDE were awarding the Grandmaster title long before that. So, okay, so d4, Najdorf, let's take Najdorf's perspective. So he played a fighting system, f5, a bit like the Sicilian on the other side, but not as popular because it is weakening the king a lot of the time. It's not as safe as the Sicilian, the Dutch, in general, as a very gross generalization. Anyway, c4, we have knight f6. Knight c3, and Najdorf plays e6, and there might be a possibility, of bishop b4 sometimes. We see knight f3, d5. Actually, it seems here a stone wall. This looks a little bit passive, this e3. Actually, let's put on live book. Let's connect to live book and add a Gebitzer as well. e3 is well down there in live book, 19 games. Usually in this position, in this particular position, bishop f4, and it's supposed to be a slight advantage for white. So games like that. Oh, okay. So let's get back to the game. So d5, we have e3 locking in this bishop. This does seem very timid to lock it in rather than play the popular move bishop f4. Bit timid. c6, have bishop d3, bishop d6, and this might be the last time white can pounce in with knight e5 or not. No, actually this is not the case. Actually, there's a kind of thing I remember from the past about this, that in fact knight e5 is not really a major thing. You might be annoyed with f4 later. I know this f4, maybe it's about equal. And if you wanted to stop that here, actually it's not that easy, because if you play knight bd7, I think, sorry, if you play knight bd7 here, the problem is f5 actually. So there's cd, and the thing is you've just blocked f5. So you can't even stop knight e5 if you wanted to here, because this is slightly unpleasant. It's nice for white. to have that c-file with knight b5 in particular. That's nice for white. And in fact, white can even get this diagonal. So this sort of disaster can happen if you're too keen here to stop knight e5. Simply cd, basically, because of this. And that would justify white's opening, hemming in the bishop. So wisely, Najdorf just castled, actually. He just castled. And now we have knight e2. And now there's a certain comfort in controlling this e5 square. White had played this tactical knight g5. Maybe he's not the strongest player ever, to be honest. And there's a fairly I'm sure you'll find it. Okay, black to play. Yes, black to play. So if I give you 30 seconds, what would you play with black here? Anyone? Yeah, he's not a grandmaster, Glucksberg, apparently. So this is only game in the database, poor guy. But it's good that these guys that weren't grandmasters, they get featured in the best of the best games. Does that show a sick preference by chess games members that they don't mind who gets beaten up? But it's bishop takes h2 check. Yes, he has neglected the h2 thing, and so if takes, then we have knight g4, discover attack. Yeah, it's a basic tactic, and this is just horrible for white. Yeah, so king h1, but now we have knight g4 anyway, with the idea that if takes, we just pounce in and deliver a mate that I've used even this evening in bullet chess. This kind of checkmate pattern with a Greek gift is pretty unpleasant. So white has to stop that. He plays f4, but the attack is in the making now. Queen e8 to go here. g3, and this is where it gets quite interesting actually, because our white's piece is kind of trapped. After king g2, is he about to lose to this guy because of rook h1 basically, which is a nasty pin, and the bishop remains trapped. So was this whole thing a little bit optimistic? Apparently there's the technical way of playing this position is d takes. Let's have a look at this, because I've never seen this variation, so I'm just out of interest. And what's the idea, I wonder? So say here. Oh right, yeah, I think it's to do with this diagonal. I think d takes is trying to clear this diagonal. So while the bishop is getting munched, the king is a target on the diagonal. I guess that's the idea, that we can play like this and rescue the bishop. So that's a top secret variation I've never seen before. Okay, just generated. But anyway, in this game we get a much more surprising move, which actually might even be technically stronger than that engine move. It does come up as stronger. No, not anymore. No, d takes c4 is probably technically strongest, but the move played is extremely beautiful. So black's playing here, and I've given you a clue. It's not d takes c4. So what does black want to do here to rescue his bishop? Bishop's about to be pinned. Now, okay, this is a nice way of playing the position. Yeah, this is a nice way of playing the position. But you don't want to do that. There's something else. Anything else? What would you play here then? Any ideas? What do you think Najdorf played? Alright, I'm going to show you soon. Well, now probably. Right, tell me anyway what you agreed with this. Bishop g1. So the threat here is queen h2 checkmate, yeah? Checkmate mating, because here, not mate immediately, there'll be queen h1 checkmate. Just to put that on the board, I'll give a white token move. check and mate. Yeah, let's take that in. So that's the fret. But white extinguishes that, it seems, with knight takes g1. But we still have this check now, king f3, and now the king is a bit hemmed in, right? What black plays e5 to be able to play e4. This looks really nasty though. Yeah. Okay, so we have d takes, and we get a wonderful continuation now. Which is a lot of fun. Okay, so in this position, I hope you would sacrifice a knight. In fact, either knight will do. Either knight will do. It's the same effect, basically. So either knight will do. To bring the king to f4. And now we have knight g6 jack. And the point here is... Sorry, this isn't the game. What am I talking about? This is the game. I've taken with the wrong knight, haven't I? In the actual game, he took with the other knight, not this knight. Oh, muppets. I was saying there's no difference anyway. I'm probably right that there's no difference. But let's stick with the game. Knight d takes. He took with the d1. Maybe that's more principled because it opens up the bishop immediately. Alright. He took with the d1. F takes. Knight. We do get the same position. Knight g6. So king f3. Now here is a key move played by black, which is positional and attacking. So black to play here, positional and attacking. What would you play? Anyone? Alright, now if you said queen h5, let's have a look at queen h5. There might be king here, and actually white is up in material quite a lot. Yeah, it's not that. The king can't be allowed to go back. The queen's doing a really good job actually of cutting out the retreats. So you can't allow that. No, the queen's part of the mating net here. You don't want to undo your woven mating net. No, this positional move as well, it opens up the bishop. And it threatens immediately. Knight e5 would be checkmate, actually. Because we've also taken away that f4 square for the king. If black had on the move, it's checkmate. So white has to do something about that. He plays e takes. And now the king's got, in return, although f4's been taken away, he's got e3. So this is actually okay for white with king e3. Funny enough. And if d4, king takes. And white's actually better. And if knight takes, king c3. And white ends up being better. Surviving. Okay, so not knight e5 check. So this is quite this is quite a funny this is quite a funny move actually. So black to play here. I mean, you might have seen this before, probably. It's like one of the immortal games. It's like so black to play here. It's actually really cool. In fact, this is the curiosity. I have to say, this is a really critical crunch time test, because any other move is actually better for white. Any other move is better for white here if you don't get this move. So 1,000 points. Black to play. Yeah, okay. I hope you haven't seen this game. Well, you probably have. It's a classic. Bishop G4, and it's got a very, very amusing point, actually. I've just realised, actually honest, without even checking fully. It's got an amusing point that if takes, it is amusing. It tickles me, this one, for some reason. Black has a forced mate. See it? Can you see a forced mate in 2? This is a great mate in 2. This is a good mate in 2. It's funny. It's funny. It's amusing. Come on, you guys. You must be able to see mate in 2s, yeah? Now, someone said, Jordan says bishop, sorry, someone's mentioned h5, but it's got the snag that the king would go here, but it's on the right track. Sometimes tactically we want to work out the snags and find a way of removing the snags. So yeah, you play knight e5 check first, which wrenches open this f file, and then it's the h pawn which delivers mate. Checkmate. This is only a variation of the game, by the way, so that's why it's a bad idea to take the bishop. So we have king takes. Don't tell me that was the game. Oh no. Oh no, don't tell me that was the game. I thought it was just a variation. Oh dear. Actually, it does appear to be the game. I don't know why I thought that was a variation. Sorry about that. It's the heat. Sorry. That is how the game ended. He didn't want to give up his queen. The best move might be king e3. Okay, he didn't want to give up his queen. We can just take here. And this is bad news because basically, I'll give you an example. Check. This is not nice. The king is still going to be hunted down. Yeah, things are dropping off. So yeah, white's basically lost an entire queen there. So he did actually take. We get this knight e5, very forcing, and h5. It probably tickled quite a lot of people, this checkmate. I do wonder, it's a bit naughty because the opponent isn't a grandmaster or anything, and that's the kind of thing, you know, the forcing moves can be fatal. I guess it's a cute checkmate. So apparently that is the game score. Yes, that's what happened. Okay, there's probably a ton of variations I didn't show you. I have covered it on my channel in detail. Yeah, there's probably absolutely millions of variations I didn't show you. But anyway, let's go to another notable game now. Okay, so this is the great Nimzovich against Simish. Now Frederick Simish had this, I believe he's the one that had this reputation of not managing his time well. I believe in one tournament he defaulted a load of games on time, or it might be someone else, but I have this feeling it might be him. No, it does say that on ChessGames.com. Simish, it says in later years, Simish, who was playing white in this game, became a notorious time travel addict. At the Busan tournament 1969 and the Lid Kopping 1969 tournaments, he lost all of his games on time. Nonetheless, he could play fast chess as well, winning 2 blitz tournaments at the age of 61. In fact, he was a profound opening theoretician. 2 major opening variations named after him, which are still played at the highest levels today. We've got the Nimzo Indian Saimish, and you've got the King's Indian Saimish. The Nimzo Indian Saimish is when you play an early A3, just for those interested. And actually they give me this cozy feeling. I have had some good games of this with white. You play this quick A3, and you know he's got a point. You get this strength and centre, and against the King's Indian, the Saimish variation is the one with F3. You know this, and they both actually fill me with good feelings to play both of his systems, even today. I'm sure many other people. In fact, my only draw against the Grandmaster in FIDE one-day games was against Peter Wells with a Saimish variation against the Nimzo Indian, and Peter Wells is supposed to be a Nimzo Indian expert, so I credit Saimish a lot. Yeah, he has some comfortable systems. I should check out his repertoire generally, just in case he has other interesting ideas which didn't make it into officialdom with his name. So anyway, coming along with this game, yeah, so d4 knight f6 by Nimzovich, c4, and Nimzovich plays e6, so he's playing his Nimzo Indian system. Yes, so they both made heavy contributions to opening theory. It was a fertile land at the time of the 1920s. You could make your name in the openings, as these two did. And Nimzovich's entire My System book, of course, which is a must-read. If you have not got Nimzovich My System, there is something wrong with you. You must get it, because it's a classic. I mean, it's a classic work, you know. Please tell me, everyone's got My System, right? You got My System, anyone? Everyone? You should get it. It's a classic. Okay, so knight f3, which is Queen's Indian territory now. It's not even a proper Nimzo Indian at the moment. So we got Queen's Indian territory. The thing is about playing the Nimzo Indian, when they play this, you have to know about the Queen's Indian, which sounds a bit poxy, right? You have to know about the Queen's Indian as well. It's like double the amount of work. Not so glamorous now, is it? None of this fun pin stuff. Yeah. Okay, so instead you can still go for the e4 control. So b6. So trying to go for the e4 control, right? g3, bishop b7. We're well in my book. Bishop g2, bishop e7, knight c3, castles. Quite often here knight e4 is played. Castles d5. Now usually it seems knight e4 is played. There's been a lot of games with that, but we have d5 here by Nimzovich. Knight e5, c6, c takes. Yeah, and I remember distinctly, this is amazing at the emotional level. I have to say, these guys are just using their systems at an emotional level. There's an emotional connection, because I have obviously used the Nimzo Indian a lot as well. But I remember playing this with white, and this position, when you take on d5 like this, there's something wrong with white's position already. Maybe it's kind of profound or not. Basically, let me try and describe it, but I've had a bad emotion with the white pieces, that the feeling has nothing to do for white generally here. Now you might wonder why that is the case. Let me try and say, the bishop's hemmed in. The knight is actually a potential target later to this sort of thing, to b4. This diagonal might actually be sensitive for the bishop as well. Black's got a good grip on e4. there's no major strategic break for white. Any attempt to play f3 and e4 probably a weakening d4. It's a kind of miserable position. I don't know. Okay, I've stated the obvious about it, and this game is a demonstration in itself of why it's a miserable position. But already it's a kind of miserable position here, in some respects. I think just going back to this a6. So we have bishop f4, a6. The problem is white can't even play. You might think a move like a4, but you know we're weakening b4 there. So to stop b5, it seems pretty painful already. You know, there's knight c6 potentially. It's not ideal that black is playing b5 here. And there's two aspects to that. It's getting even more control of key central light squares. Basically, it's potentially entrenching a knight outpost on c4 as well. Okay, so let's see. Anyway, Nimzovich's points. It protects the outpost station by a6 and b5. So c4 is the outpost station. Yeah, I think Nimzovich would technically say that black has an outpost station on c4, but unless you can see it, I don't think there's a corresponding outpost station for white. I think black's got a kind of exciting plan here and white hasn't. I don't know if any of you want to suggest a plan for white, but I really think that's the case. There is something really bad about white's position here. I think it lacks a plan. Black has a natural plan of using the outpost square c4 with b5, knight d7 to b6, and then maybe rook c8, and at the right time knight c4, not when there's a tactic to win b7. But I don't know if you can see a plan for white. As I mentioned, f3 and e4 might suffer, you know, because sometimes the d pawn's weak. So anyway, white does play in a plan as well, I think. Rook c1, and we have b5. Yeah, let's see, probably a move like this is needed. This is an engine suggestion. Probably a move is like this. Let's see, what's the idea? Alright, so we can immediately take here. And if takes, there's rook c7 winning immediately. And if takes here, bishop c7, and it's not entirely. This knight might find a way to help actually a strategic pawn break later, or, in fact, more importantly, might be going to b3. Let's have a quick look at this. This looks as though it's gone wrong for black. Okay, because in fact the downside is the dark squares, right? So that looks like a good plan, but it wasn't played. So that's a crazy looking move in some respects. Knight b1, but it might be a really strong move in the position. Maybe. So anyway, queen b3, which doesn't help because black wants to do this plan anyway. It's accelerating with tempo, this plan. Knight c6, and Nimzovich calls it the ghost. It's not really okay. It's hitting d4 as well. So Nimzovich is saying with noiseless steps he presses on towards c4. For sure, the way white's played it, black's structure is optimistic for what happens to the dark squares. As long as nothing happens on the dark squares, this is fine to seal out that c4 outpost like this, but it is at some dark square cost to do this. But anyway, the ghost is basically well, it's interesting. What is the ghost of the threat? White's got a tactical move here. Knight takes d5, in fact. Maybe he should have played this. Knight takes, queen takes, queen e3, and apparently it's about equal. So maybe he should have played like that. It's quite a tactic. You know, if we take here, just take here, better for white. Yeah, he should have played that. So there's another opportunity lost here, and it starts to be positionally suspect now for white, or does it? No, in fact, there's another tactic here for white which he didn't play. I don't know. Simish was obviously not taking the most out of his tactical opportunities in this position. There is actually a loose piece here which can be tapped into with knight e4. Okay, and this would get into those dark squares. As long as some doubt is cast on a6 and b5, that would be good, but he doesn't. He plays h3. He's allowing himself to be positionally murdered by someone that is essentially taking lots of liberties in this game, actually. If you look at the tactical undertones that could have happened, you could say that Black's play has been so far optimistic, but now he's really positionally in the driving seat, because queen d7 is threatening b4 without even knight a4, and then maybe even bishop a4. This b4 looks nasty, and in fact I'm not even sure a3 is possible here, or maybe it is a5 with b4 to follow. It's better for black anyway. Okay, so black's got away with a few things to get this position, and we have king h2. No, Nimzovich's comments are funny here. Sorry, he plays knight h5, and it sort of gets to be a sort of Dutch stone wall strategy because we have this Dutch stone wall formation. But he says he could have supplied him with a second ghost. So you need Ghostbusters soon with queen b7, and the knight d7 to b6 to c4 maneuver. But Nimzovich wanted to turn his attention to the king side. Now, if you missed the impact of that first ghost, because Nimzovich's thing is to say sometimes the threat is often stronger than the execution. I'm not sure I entirely explained the first ghost that was provided. Yeah. When he played knight c6, that was the first ghost. And basically he saw it as a big success that he tempted white at this point to play this, because basically he said Simish should sacrifice 2 tempi to exchange off the tempo eating knight for the knight which is almost undeveloped. So that was the success of the first ghost. The ghost was essentially this threat of not just knight takes d4 but e3. If e3 had happened, by the way, it is also locking in this bishop in the pawn chain. And indeed there might be knight a5 to c4, but maybe not knight c4 immediately. There might be it might be fine to allow that, which is part of what he's saying, that really you would like. What he's saying is you'd like the opponent, you'd like to supply the opponent ghosts, not so they set up Ghostbusters, but that they compromise their position voluntarily. So he saw that as a compromise, that 2 tempo being used to put the knight on e5, and it's just swapping off for a relatively undeveloped piece. So that was the success of the first ghost. So when we talk about ghosts, we're talking about potential threats that you're providing the opponent potential threats, ghosts he calls them, and the opponent's making concessions to address that. So yeah, okay, but it does seem objectively, tactically, this is actually a loose piece from a technical point of view, right? So knight e4 does exist, but anyway, it's ignored. So we're going to go back to the second ghost now. Sorry about that interlude. So yeah, he says he could have supplied him with a second ghost, yeah, by playing this and then see what concession. I mean, that's quite a number of moves for black to have. Yeah, I don't know what concession white would do there, if it would be major anyway. But anyway, he plays on the king side with knight h5. So bishop d2, and now f5. And it's strange that, okay, you might think it's strange, there's all these dark square weaknesses and no way of exploiting them here, because white's pretty passive actually. This bishop's locked out, this bishop's pretty passive, and in fact there might be this continual threat of b4 here as well if white's not careful. So we see the queen coming away, and in fact b4 is played, knight b1, and this bishop does occupy now a horrible diagonal, because this bishop's locked in and this bishop's having fun targeting some on that diagonal. And white is actually getting, somehow he's managing to get an incredibly passive position. He's going from one sort of pin to another pin now, because bishop d6. So this is more aggressive than this, and this is more aggressive than this. And it seems all of black's dark square weaknesses are now unexploitable. There's no loose pieces. And in fact, you know, white's played like a mouse now, because there's even f4 on the cards to just tear the king to shreds. But even the rook placement here, it's not just that the bishops are better, even the rook placement, that is better than any rook here of white's, because this f-file could be really dangerous. We have now a very desperate move from white indeed. Probably he should play bishop f3, and if queen f7, a4, and it looks still passive. It's better for black, but there's e4 tactically here. So that's an interesting game in itself, which is similar actually to what happened anyway. e4. So this pawn sack under worse circumstances. In fact, because he thought he could do it immediately, right? Isn't the knight just going back? And if the knight goes back, we can win a piece, and white's winning. But yeah, so this position, and in fact g6 is not so good either, because e5, and this is okay for white. The knight's chased back, it's okay for white. But no, Nimzovich very, very cruel here after e4. So white's trying to cause a concession, but Nimzovich is not listening to white's ghost here of the threat, which is actually not that much. There's not much subtlety about it. The knight is a loose piece. It's attacked. Yeah. The thing is, okay, I wonder if you can guess black's play. I'm wondering now if Nimzovich also spent a long time providing his ghost to make them more convincing that they were deeply thought out, these potential threats he had, to make them more convincing, to increase the sense of panic for white. But here, yeah, so guess black plays what? What do you reckon? This is actually technically, and I'm talking from an engine perspective, the very strongest move that black has at his disposal. So again, I'll give you 1,000 points if you can find it. The very strongest move black has at his disposal. Verified with Stockfish 8. This is a Nimzovich move which stands the test of Stockfish 8 at depth 30. And given this game was played in 1923, we have some impressive historical records of intellectual ingenuity in the form of these chess games, if this really is the strongest move in the position, and difficult for a modern chess player to find. To be honest, when I think about pins just now, I'm thinking in relation to Ghost, when you pin the opponent's pieces, I think the potential for creating ghosts is severely lessened as they become paralysed. That's a clue. They're not going to threaten anything if all their pieces are pinned, right? If you can pin all your opponent's pieces, nothing's going to be threatened for a while. There's going to be no ghosts, no need for Ghostbusters. It was just this. He just took 2 pawns. Yeah, but what else has he got? It's not just any 2 pawns. It's with a pin. He's weakened G3. This bishop's really blunted. And he's got possession of the F-file here. And with that possession, we can grow something like Rook F3, for example. What is White exactly doing here in this position? He's a token bishop up. In some respects, it's a bit like the Karpov-Kasparov game with the knights wandering around. These pieces look as bad as this famous Karpov-Kasparov game with the Kasparov gambit, because White's pieces seem just pointless here. If he moves this bishop, actually there's a tactical move here which is very amusing. Bishop E2 hitting the queen. And if here the queen's about to be checkmated, which is something Levonoronian's doing recently a lot, with Rook H5 or Bishop E7. So how would the queen actually flee from here? After Rook F5, it's pretty bad. White has to just give up a piece. It's horrible, and give up the queen. Yeah. So it seems Bishop E3, because of this threat, Bishop E2 now. It's not playable to play Bishop E3, and in fact this is a key threat, right? Bishop E2, or is it? No, it might not even be. If we play A3, I think if we play Bishop E2, Queen G5, and if here, I think we just go back to E3, right? So it's not as though the queen's getting trapped by force. So probably best if A3, A5, and then White probably ends up doing. Actually, White is getting slaughtered here with Rook A2. Funny enough, this is amusing because this rook's also really aggressive. Black is better with this apparently. It's just so passive. This, if we end up with just that horrible knight extra, yeah, it's just really passive. This is better for Black because Black's got it's really passive position. But anyway, he didn't do that. He tried to maybe address his queen with a trappable issue with Queen G5 to try and get the queen back maybe somewhere. It's protecting the bishop, but also to E3 at some point. We see Rook A F8, and there is now the threat of this one using the pin there. Also this one to try and encourage this sort of position where the queen is still harassed and run out of squares nearly, or at least winning the bishop if the queen has to go there. So there's numerous threats. Rook F5, Rook F3, even H6 is threatened. So White tries this unpinning move, at least unpinning that, but it's pretty pointless. Rook 8 to F5, Queen E3, and now sadistically, I mean, Black could just win a piece here with Rook E2, but he's being a bit sadistic. I mean, because no, actually the knight's protecting here. Maybe it's not. Okay, but Bishop A4 would win the queen. It actually would win the queen here. Bishop A4. He plays Bishop D3, which threatens to win the queen with Rook E2. Yeah, Rook E2 is now threatened. So white defends against rook e2, and black just plays h6. And now it's really unpleasant because the rook can't move because of rook e2, which traps the queen. This one can't move there because we just take there. The knight has no squares. You might think a bishop retreat. White actually resigned. He didn't try this bishop retreat. Probably a strong move. Well, I think we can just take here if there's a bishop retreat. That's simple and strong. And maintain the f file. So say here, I think we can just maintain the f file. Or just be material up. Yeah, this is just really winning, technically winning for black anyway. Count the pawns. 7 against 4. But actually, yeah, after h6, Nimzowitsch talks about the Zugzwang has announced it. White has not moved left, e.g. king h2 or g4. If king h2 or g4, then rook 5 to f3, and that's the end of that, basically. Because what does white do? Give up his queen? He has to give up his queen, and then it still is in Zugzwang. If he moves the bishop, then his bishop takes b1 at minimum. If he moves the king, I think we can just take on here, and we're still running white out moves. Yeah, it's totally gone, isn't it? So yeah, white was basically this. I don't know. He did this. He did this knight h5 as it's a kind of weird, but it's a kind of positional trap, because you might think 2 pawns is less than a knight, but in this circumstance it's just total positional binds. This position, this is a total positional binds, and h6 might just resign. There's nothing white's doing here. White is doing nothing in this position. White's dead positionally. It does resemble, in some respect, as I say, this Karpov-Kasparov game, Kasparov's Gambit game, because yeah, white's pieces, especially this knight on b1, is looking really silly. Now, did Nimzowitsch have this point about ghosts? Yes, I think Nimzowitsch personally is right. You know, the threat is often stronger than the execution. And I think he's saying to provide the opponent with ghosts, you provide the opponent with things to worry about, that they have make concessions of their own accord. But, you know, there's a thing about this game. So he didn't want to, like, maneuver this knight to c4. Instead, he just sacrifices it on h5 for 2 pawns. Yeah, okay, so interesting. I hope you got something out of that. Yeah, likes appreciated on the video, and see you next week. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers then.